Oh, that's kind of low. Okay. As we get started today, I wanted to let you know that 2 weeks from today, is the first exam for this course. The study guide is available on Blackboard under study guides, but I want to take some time and go over in class kind of what to expect. So essentially there'll be two parts. The first part will be a section that will be made up of multiple choice, completion questions, might be a short answer, something all along those lines. On the study guide, there are a variety of terms and ideas under Part 1 that you will need to know some basic information on. And like I said, all this is covered on the study guide, but I'll be posting them here on the slides here as well. So you should know the introductory issues, right? Who's the author? What's the date? Have some basic understanding of those kind of things. Know what the four main interpretations are, not just the names, but in general how they look at Revelation, right? So you should know the difference between how a preterist looks at Revelation, how a historicist looks at Revelation, those kind of things. And so the introductory issues, you'll be asked to write about those kind of things. And so there'll be, it's unlikely that there'll be a question like this, but something like, who is the author of Revelation? A, John, B, Paul, C, Peter, right? Now you're wanting that question to be on there, I'm sure, but I mean, questions like that, right? And so out of that, of course, know those apocalyptic themes. We gave them a list. All the PowerPoints are posted, as I mentioned in an email to you. I made the YouTube lectures that I've been doing for the online class. They're available as well. So you should have gotten that email. If you didn't, let me know. I can send you the link for that as well.
Is there a possibility that we can look back at our quizzes and see what we missed and whatnot?
You should be able to pull that up on your quizzes, and there are a couple of ways to do that. One is to look at your grade through gradebook, or you can click on the quiz in the quizzes section. It'll start off looking like you're taking it again, but don't worry, you won't be taking it again. And then it'll give you the quiz. It'll show you your answers and what the correct answers were if those were different. For other things, you should know the 7 churches of Asia, what they are. You should also know the order. So some of this is just brute memorization. Same thing with the Son of Man and his characteristics. Again, what I'm predominantly wanting you to focus on with the Son of Man and his characteristics are the ones that we listed in the PowerPoint. And so knowing those kind of things. And then for each of the letters, we talked about how each of the letters follows a pattern. Well, the parts of the pattern that I want you to know are these. Right? And so there might be a short answer question where it would be something like, how does Jesus identify himself to the church at Ephesus? Right? Or how does Jesus identify himself to the church at Smyrna? And so there could be a short answer question like that, or a multiple choice question, right? Which of the following is the identification of Jesus to the church at Sardis? So, basically what I would encourage you to do is to, on a sheet of paper or a note card, something, go back through that information and write those down. Identification, right? The holy and true, which is, or faithful and true, which is, one example. What Jesus knows, right? I know your works, or I know whatever. The warning, commendations, commands, and the rewards, right? And so, to the church at such and such, white stones, hidden manna, right? So, match those up. And so that's basically what I want you to know from those letters. Now, so far, that's stuff we've already covered. We still have, 4 more classes before the exam, so there are several things here that we haven't covered yet. So, essentially you need to know some things about what we're going to talk about today. Descriptions of how God looks on the throne, the 24 elders, suggestions about who the 24 elders might be, the flaming torches, the sea of glass, the 4 living creatures. Right. And then the rest of this stuff will be things that we will be covering in subsequent classes. We'll talk about the scroll of chapter 5. We'll talk about the line of the tribe of Judah and the Lamb on Thursday. For the 6 seals, you should know, what when each seal is open, what comes out. Right? So the first is a rider on a white horse, and then there's a red horse, and then there's a black horse and a pale horse. And so you should know, okay, what comes out with the first seal, second seal, third seal. Okay? And then the last thing we'll be talking about is the 144,000 from chapter 7. And basically, you'll just need to know some characteristics about them, who they are, the blessings that are attached to them. Right? So having that general knowledge for questions like, what happens when the second seal is open, right? Those kind of things. Any questions about? Again, they're all on the study guide on Blackboard. All right, so the first part will be more objective types of questions. The second part will be an essay. You'll be writing one essay, but on the exam, I will put 2 essay questions. Those questions will be drawn from 2 of these topics. And so I'll present you with 2. You get to choose which one you want to write on. Right? So you'll be writing one essay, but you'll have your choice between 2. So there might be a question on the introductory issues, right? And so describing what the different options are for authorship or date, right? And so describing, the different Johns that it might be, and then also saying what you think is most likely. Now, in many of these cases, even with the interpretations, you don't necessarily have to agree with what I've presented it, right? If you think that it's another John, that's fine. What I'm looking for is you to then defend your answer, right? And so why you think it is that it is John the Apostle, it's not the John the Apostle, it is the early date, it is the later date. And so the grading is going to be based on how well you defend, how well you present, right? These are the different options. This is the one I choose, and this is why, right? And so it's going to be based on how well you defend yours, not whether or not you agree with me. And so the same thing with the interpretations. And so in just about all of these, essentially, if you know that first section pretty well, you should be able to do well on the essay, because you're just kind of pulling it all together instead of the bits and pieces. Or if you have these pretty well down, you should be able to do well on the multiple choice, right? So, it's all kind of tied here together. It's just a different way of talking about it. I give you a little bit more detail on the study guide about what types of questions, right? So, for example, the description of the churches of Asia, that includes an assessment of the spiritual conditions of each, right? The problems they are apparently facing and what Jesus requires of them, right? So that's what it is. So, essentially in this essay, you would be talking about, well, here are the kind of things that are going on in Ephesus and Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea, right? And so that's general. I'll give you a little bit more information on each of those. Right? I'm not going to give you the specific questions, but if you're prepared to talk about those things, you'll be prepared for the essay. Again, you only have to write one essay. You will have your choice between 2. What questions do you have? As you are preparing for the exam, by all means, if you have any questions, you want to sit down and talk about some things. If you can't find something, you're looking through your notes and, I can't find this, get in contact with me. Let me know how I can help you as you prepare for that. Don't forget as well, if you're planning on doing the first reflection paper, that is due this Friday. Is it Friday? Yeah, this Friday. I think I got mixed up on my dates. This Friday by 5 p.m. So make sure to complete that.
How long is it actually?
500 words. Right? So it's not an exceptionally long essay that you need to do. That's a minimum. There really isn't a maximum, but if you get more than 1,500 words, you're probably saying too much, and you're probably repeating yourself, right? So, but in general, page and a half, double spaced, you should do a pretty good job with it. Any other questions about any of that? All right, so we still have a little bit left over from chapter 3 to finish up, specifically with the church at Laodicea. We've just begun talking about the church of Laodicea. We're about halfway through that discussion when we ended up last Thursday. As we talked about, Laodicea was and this is all material we talked about last week, so you probably have it in your notes already. Laodicea was a rather prosperous town, known for its textiles and clothing, known for its banking and its medicine. And what appears to be the case is that the pride that the city had made its way into the church. The church had kind of adopted similar types of attitudes. And so when Jesus writes to the church at Laodicea, he is writing to a church that receives no commendation. Right? This is the only church that receives only condemnation. Several of the other churches, yes, received some very strong condemnation, but there was something Jesus found within those churches that was still faithful. Laodicea doesn't seem to have that. And we finished up talking about this idea about Laodicea being this lukewarm church. And that probably the idea of them being neither cold or hot was that there was nothing profitable about them. There's something profitable about cold water, there's something profitable about hot water, but lukewarm water wasn't something that was necessarily good. And so the message that Jesus is saying is that, I'm about ready to spit you out of my mouth. I'm going to vomit. You make me want to vomit is the way that we talked about it, right? This is how the church is affecting Jesus. Because they have this attitude, as we mentioned, of pride. I'm rich, I've prospered, I need nothing. Right? They don't see themselves as being a church that needs other people. And perhaps even they've kind of developed this mentality, as strange as it would sound, that they don't even need Jesus. And it's probably one of those things where they wouldn't have explicitly said that, but the actions and the mentality and their behavior probably indicated that was the case. Perhaps it is a church made up of Christians who have accommodated to the pagan culture around them. Because one of the things that their attitude is this idea of richness and prosperity. When we contrast that with the attitude and the conditions of a church like Smyrna, which has said, you're poor, you have poverty, but you're really rich. Perhaps what has happened here at Laodicea is that the Christians are cooperating with those trade guilds. They're going to the temples. They're having the feasts. They're participating in a lot of pagan rituals while still trying to maintain this Christian identity. Unlike Smyrna, which is probably, they had refused to do that, and because of that had been economically marginalized. And so they say, I'm rich, I've prospered, I need nothing, and Jesus says, no, you're actually wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. Your true condition is the exact opposite of what you claim. But what's also interesting here is how this is a comment on the commodities of the city of Laodicea. Right? It was known for its clothing. It was known for its banking. It was known for its medicine, particularly medicine related to sight. There was an eye salve, to help with people that were experiencing eye trouble. And so Jesus says, you're poor, you're blind, and you're naked. You think you have these conditions, these things, but you are in the exact opposite situation. And so Jesus encourages them to do a couple things. Instead of trusting in the economic institutions of the city of Laodicea, he encourages them to buy refined gold from Jesus, right? Buy from me gold refined by fire so that you may be rich, verse 18, chapter 3. Right? And so this gold that has been purified. No, he's not talking here, of course, about physical gold, right? But he is instead talking about, look to me for your spiritual needs. Right? Second, he says, I want you to buy from me white robes. Get your clothing, your spiritual clothing from me. Clothing to white robes to clothe you and to cover your nakedness. And then finally, to buy from Jesus eye salve. Instead of trusting in the eye salve of the city of Laodicea, trust in Jesus for that. Again, not talking about physical eyes or physical medicine, but spiritual awareness of their condition. Now, in each case, he says buy. Right? Buy this, buy this, buy this. But what does it really cost? How much is Jesus charging for this? Right? If you have to ask for the prices on the menu, it's too expensive. He's not charging anything for it, right? It's free. He's saying buy, but it's actually free, right? If they truly wanted these things, they would be free. And so, it says buy, but it really means free. But as we look at the situation of the church at Laodicea and how much this has affected Jesus, Jesus also reminds them there is something that he cares about them still. Because if he did not care about them, he would not be wasting his time with them. Right? I reprove and discipline those whom I love. Right? Despite their failures, Jesus continues to love them. That's why he's disciplining them. That's why he's warning them. Because he still is concerned. But they need to repent. They need to change. And then Jesus talks about kind of probably one of the most famous images from Revelation, one that a lot of people people have done paintings of this, had the artwork in their homes, of Jesus standing in a garden scene at a door knocking. But don't forget, as it's pictured in Revelation, it is not that nice long brown hair Jesus with the white robes. This is white hair, eyes on fire, burnished bronze, sword coming out of his mouth Jesus. That's not the picture you see. But that's still the picture of Jesus that John's using here. But by saying, I'm standing at the door knocking, what is he communicating to the church at Laodicea? I'm waiting for you to let me in. Right? He still wants to be there in Laodicea. He's not given up on them. We know from other of the letters that at some point, if they don't listen, he'll remove himself. But one of the things that's interesting here that comes out of the Greek text that isn't always represented in the English is when he says, I am standing at the door knocking, he says, if anyone hears my voice. In some translation it says, if you hear my voice, right? So it kind of puts it in the second person, like if you hear my voice. But it literally says, if anyone hears my voice. Which makes you wonder, is anyone listening to Jesus at Laodicea? I'm knocking. Is there anybody in the church of Laodicea that is listening to me anymore? Is anyone hearing me not. And the promise is, you got to open the door, right? So there's that condition, right? Jesus is going to knock, but he's not going to barge in. Right? If you open the door, I will come in, I will eat with you. What do you think is meant by the image of Jesus eating with people from the church of Laodicea? Fellowship, right? I mean, there's that close association. Right? If you're willing to open that door, we'll have close association. Some people have also suggested that maybe it is representative of what's known as the Messianic banquet. Several times, especially in the New Testament, but there's images of this in the Old Testament, the afterlife, like we call heaven, paradise, is presented as a huge banquet with the Messiah as host. That's probably not what he necessarily means here, but it probably has that foreshadowing, right? And so it means we'll be in close fellowship, but there's also the promise of you'll sit at my table in the afterlife, with the Messiah as host. To the one who conquers, they will receive a place with Jesus on his throne. Now, if somebody would turn to 2 Timothy chapter 2 and read verse 12, please. 2 Timothy 2, verse 12.
If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will also deny us.
Right, so this idea of remaining faithful will lead to reigning with Jesus, and so Jesus promises them a place on his throne to the one who overcomes. But as a good way to kind of tie all of these letters together, Jesus reminds the church at Laodicea that he too had been a conqueror. And so he says, just as I myself conquered and sat down with my Father on his throne. And so what he's asking of the Christians, not only at Laodicea, but throughout the churches of Asia, is to overcome, to conquer like Jesus himself had overcome and conquered. Any questions or comments about Laodicea or any of the churches?